They laughed at her the morning she carried her mother to the clinic on her back. Not helped her, not walked beside her, carried her. Her mother was too weak to walk, and there was no money for transport, and the clinic was 2 miles down the red earth road. So Adais bent her back and she carried her, and the women at the roadside watched and laughed. Look at this one, carrying her mother like a sack of rice. Is that not the poverty girl? The one from the broken compound? Eh? That family. They cannot even afford suffering properly. Ades did not stop walking. She did not look at them. She adjusted her mother's weight on her back and she kept moving. One step, then another. The red earth road was long and the sun was already high, and her wrapper was soaked through before she reached the first junction. But she kept walking because her mother was breathing on her back, and as long as her mother was breathing, Ades had somewhere to be. Her name meant daughter of the people. The irony of this was not lost on the village of Ogweme, because the people of Ogweme had decided at some point that nobody could quite trace back to its beginning, that Ades was not worth much. She was 22, thin in the way that hunger makes you thin. Not fashionably, not elegantly, just essentially, as if the body has learned to use only what it cannot do without. Her clothing was clean, but worn. Her sandals had been repaired so many times, the repair had become the sandal. She lived with her mother in a compound at the edge of the village, a two-room structure that had been her father's before he died, and had been slowly losing its argument with time ever since. The roof leaked in 3 places. She knew which three. She put buckets. The village had its reasons, as villages always do. The reasons were small individually and devastating collectively. Her father had died, owing money to people in the village, not from dishonesty, from illness that lasted longer than savings. And the debt had transferred somehow in the moral accounting of Ugweme to his widow and daughter. There were rumors about her mother, rumors the way village rumors are, half truth wrapped in invention, wrapped in the specific creativity of people who have too much time and not enough mercy. And Adais herself had the specific misfortune of being beautiful in a way that threatened certain women and attracted the wrong kind of attention from certain men. And when she refused that attention, the men found it easier to turn it into a story about her character than to examine their own. So the village had decided: poor, proud, strange, unlucky, best avoided. The children had been told this by their mothers, and the children had processed it the way children process things given to them by adults they trust, completely, without question, and with the particular cruelty of those who have been given permission. They called things at her when she walked to the market. They scattered from the well when she came to draw water, not because she had done anything, but because proximity to misfortune was itself considered dangerous. She drew her water alone every morning. She had drawn water alone for so long that solitude at the well had stopped feeling like a wound and started feeling like weather, just the condition of the morning. What the village saw when they looked at Adais, a girl who should be ashamed of what she came from. What the village missed when they looked at Adais, everything. The king's visit to Ugweme was not announced with ceremony. Eze Obiora Nwachukwu was 38 years old, and he had learned early in his reign that ceremony produced performances, not truth. He wanted to see Ugweme, not the version of Ugweme that prepared itself for a king, the version that existed when no king was watching. He came with only 2 attendants, dressed simply, his vehicle unremarkable. He told the village head he was a government assessor conducting community visits. The village head believed him. The village, which did not know who he was, treated him accordingly, with the moderate respect given to someone with official authority but no personal significance. He watched. He was very good at watching. He had spent 17 years learning how to be invisible in plain sight. The first time he saw Adais, she was at the market. She was selling tomatoes, a small arrangement on a cloth on the ground. Perhaps 12 small piles, each pile worth almost nothing. He noticed her because of what happened when the old man fell. An elderly man carrying a heavy load had stumbled in the market crowd, his load scattering across the path, his body going down with the specific helplessness of old age when it loses its footing. The market kept moving around him, not cruelly necessarily. People were busy, people had things to carry. The specific urban and semi urban indifference that forms over years of everyone having too much to do. But Adese had left her tomatoes, left them unattended in a busy market, which any market woman knew was a risk, and gone to the old man immediately. She helped him up. She gathered his scattered things. She did not do it for an audience. She did it before anyone had time to form one. When the old man was upright and organized, she went back to her tomatoes. Three of them had been stepped on. She looked at them for a moment. Then she arranged what was left and continued. The king, watching from across the market, stood very still. The second time was at the well. It was early morning and he had gone alone. His attendants thought he was still sleeping to see the village before it was fully awake. Adaze was at the well. He watched her draw water with the practiced efficiency of someone who has been doing this alone for years. Then a young girl arrived, perhaps 7 years old, carrying a clay pot too heavy for her, sent by a mother who had not calculated the weight correctly against the child's strength. The girl was struggling. She would have made it, probably, but it would have taken a long time and cost the child more than it should have. Adais finished her own water, looked at the child, and without making anything of it, helped her fill the pot, carried it on her own head while the child carried the lighter bucket, walked with her to the edge of the path leading to her compound, transferred the pot gently to the child's head, and watched her go. Then came back for her own water. No one had seen it except the king, which meant no one would tell anyone, which meant Adaze got nothing from it, which was exactly why it meant something. The king walked back to where he was staying and sat for a long time without speaking to anyone. The third time was at the clinic. He had gone to inspect the community health center as part of his cover. A woman was there with a sick child and no money for the medication. The nurse, tired, overworked, not unkind but not resourced, was explaining that without payment, the prescription could not be filled. The woman was crying without sound, the specific crying of someone who has run out of options and has not yet found the next place to run. Adais was there with her mother, waiting for a follow up visit. She listened to the exchange between the nurse and the woman for a moment. Then she opened the small cloth purse she carried, opened it and turned it slightly so only she could see the inside, and she looked at what was there. She looked for a long time. Then she closed the purse, stood up, and went to the counter. She paid. Not everything. She did not have everything, but she paid enough that the prescription could be filled. The woman turned to thank her, and Ades had already returned to her seat. She sat beside her mother and did not look at the woman, not from coldness, from the specific dignity of someone who gives without wanting to be seen giving. Her mother touched her hand. Ada, I still have enough for the transport, Adesi said quietly. Her mother said nothing more, but she did not let go of her hand. The king, standing in the doorway of the record room, had seen all of it. He left Ogueme 2 days later. He said nothing to anyone before he left. His attendants noticed he was quieter than usual on the drive home. One of them asked if the assessment had gone well. Better than expected, the king said. He looked out the window at the red earth road as the car moved. He was thinking about the way she had looked at the inside of her purse. the way she had counted what she had, the way she had decided. The announcement came 3 weeks later. By then, Ugweme had forgotten about the government assessor. By then, Ugweme was occupied with the news that the king was seeking a wife, not from any of the major families, not from the city. The king had said publicly in the press conference carried on the radio stations all over the region that he would be visiting certain communities personally, that he had specific qualities he was looking for. That title, family name, and wealth were not among those qualities. The village of Ugweme received this news with the specific excitement of people who recognize an opportunity. The mothers of daughters began planning immediately. Dresses were commissioned, hair was arranged. Daughters were briefed on posture and speech and how to be noticed. The anticipation in Ugweme was electric and particular. Nobody, not a single person in the entire village, mentioned Adaizi's name in connection with any of this. She was at the well drawing water when she heard the women at the roadside discussing the king's coming visit. She listened. She went home. She told her mother what she had heard. Her mother said, God does things. Adaizi said, yes. She did not say anything else about it. The king arrived in Ugweme formally this time. Cars, attendants, the specific gravity of official arrival. The village had arranged itself for the occasion. A gathering in the community square. The village head, the elders, the important families, and then everyone else arranged behind in the specific social geometry of Ugweme's hierarchy. The daughters, who had been prepared, were positioned at the front. They were beautiful. They wore their finest. They had practiced their smiles and their stillness and their speech. The king moved through the gathering with the calm authority of someone who is looking for something specific and has not found it yet. He spoke to the village head. He acknowledged the elders. He accepted the welcome. And then, from his position at the front of the gathering, he looked toward the back. Ades was there. She had not dressed specially. She had come because the entire village had come, and her absence would have been noticed. And she had learned that being noticed for absence was worse than being noticed for presence. She was wearing a clean wrapper. Her hair was simply arranged. She was standing near the back with her mother beside her. The king saw her. Something in his face, if you are watching carefully, became very still. What happened next is something that Ugweme would talk about for 20 years. The king did not make a speech about his selection. He did not present a list of criteria. He walked through the crowd, past the daughters at the front who had prepared so carefully, past the important families, through the middle section, to the back. He stopped in front of Adeze. The village held its breath. Adeze looked at him. She did not know who he was. She had been at the well when the cars arrived and had come late and had not seen his face before. He said quietly, so that only she could hear at first, I was in Ugweme 3 weeks ago. I saw you help an old man who had fallen in the market. You left your goods unattended to do it. Adesi said nothing. I saw you carry water for a child who could not manage it alone. You went back for your own after. Adesi felt something happening in her chest that she did not have a name for. I saw you open your purse in the clinic. I saw you look at what was inside. I saw the decision you made. The village was completely silent now. Everyone could see who he was standing in front of. Nobody could yet believe it. Adais looked at him. I did not do any of those things for... I know, he said. He let that sit for a moment. Then, louder, so the whole gathering could hear. I have been looking for someone to stand beside me, not because they were selected by family or society, but because of who they are when no one is watching. He looked at Adais. I was watching. The silence in Ugweme village square lasted for a very long time. Then it broke. Not with celebration, with the specific uncomfortable sound of people who have to rearrange everything they thought they knew. The woman who had called Adais the poverty girl was standing at the front. She did not speak. She could not find a single word. The girl who had scattered from the well when Adais came to draw water was in the middle of the crowd. She looked at the ground. The man who had spread the rumors about Adesi's character was near the side. He turned away, not in guilt, in the inability to be in the same space as his own actions reflected back at him. Adesi's mother, standing beside her daughter, made no sound at all. She simply took Adesi's hand, held it the way she had held it in the clinic. And Adesi, who had been carrying something heavy for a very long time, felt it begin, very slowly, to lift. She did not say yes immediately. This surprised people. She asked to speak with the king privately. He agreed. They spoke for 20 minutes away from the gathering, in the shade of the large Iroko tree at the edge of the community square. Nobody knows exactly what was said. What people observed was that the king listened more than he spoke, and that when Ade spoke, she did not look at the ground. What she said, the parts that came out later from her own account, was this: I need you to understand that I am not going to become someone else. I do not know how to pretend to be what I am not. I have never learned it. And the king had said, that is why I am here. She had looked at him for a long time. Then, my mother comes with me. That is not a request. Of course, he said. She had nodded and said yes. The morning she left Ugweme, the village came out to watch, not to celebrate, not all of them. Some of them came with the specific mixture of shame and something they would not call envy and would instead call surprise. Mama Nkechi, who had been among the loudest voices at the roadside the morning Adeze had carried her mother to the clinic, stood near the front of those watching. She watched the car pull up to the compound at the edge of the village. She watched Adeze come out in a simple dress, her mother beside her, both of them moving with the specific unhurried dignity of people who have decided not to perform for anyone. Adeze paused at the gate of her compound. She looked at the village, not at any single person, at the village. She said nothing. She did not need to say anything. Then she helped her mother into the car, got in herself, and left. Mama Nkechi stood there for a long time after the car had gone. Someone beside her said, did any of us treat her well? Even one time? Mama Nkechi did not answer. She went back inside her compound. She had some things to think about. The lesson of Ugweme was not about a king choosing a poor girl. That is not the lesson. The lesson is what the king said when he addressed his court afterward, when they asked him to explain his choice. He said, I visited many communities. In each one, I saw the same things: people working hard, people suffering, people hoping. That is not rare. He paused. What is rare is someone who suffers and still looks at the person beside them, who has almost nothing and still thinks, who else needs something? Who has been wounded by her own community and still shows up for that same community. He looked at the members of his court. I did not choose her because she was poor. I did not choose her because she was patient. I chose her because she was free. Free from what? One of the elders asked. From the need to be seen doing good before she could do it. He sat back. That kind of person is not common. And that kind of person is exactly what the seat beside mine requires. The women of Ugweme tell this story still to their daughters, to girls who are struggling, to anyone who has been made to feel like their circumstances determine their value. Subscribe to this channel. Every week we bring you African stories that carry truths this deep. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today.